Good morning, good afternoon for some of you. Thanks a lot for joining our webinar today on how to identify the information that is most at risk in your organization. Thanks a lot for taking the time. Thanks a lot for connecting. Thanks also for your patience. We have a little delay. We were just waiting to accommodate those still connecting. So big thank you. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Michal. I'm a pre-sales engineer here at SealPath, so my responsibilities are mainly to support all of our partners, our sales staff in all technical aspects during the sales process. To support our customers with demos, presentations, helping them implement our solution, and also doing events, webinars like this we will having today. So let's jump right into it. Today, during today's session, I would like to talk about what is meant by information at risk and what is the purpose of identifying it. Also, how to identify the most at risk information in the organization. I will tell you about some security measures and best practices to do so, to protect your information. At the end, I will give answers to frequently asked questions, and you will get the chance to ask questions on your side as well. So, what is meant by information at risk? Generally speaking, and that should be the message for today, all information within a company is confidential, okay? No company wants their information to be circulating around without any control. So, what is information at risk? Information that can cause damage in the event of a leak could be considered information at risk. So information usually has some kind of value for the companies. It's key to their businesses. And its unauthorized access, misuse, disclosure, modification, or even destruction could be harmful to the companies, to the organizations. So all information has a certain level of risk associated to it, okay? That includes information classified as public as well. In case of public information, it has clearly a minor risk, but still, when you think of the case where some kind of attacker modifies public information, information that is supposed to get to a certain audience, it would make the company send wrong or misleading information, and it would cause harm for the reputation of the company. Could cause all kind of bad. It could have a bad impact on the company. Okay. So you can say that all information has a certain confidentiality and a risk to it. It can be higher, lower, depending on the type of the document. Okay. The confidentiality level, the dimension that affects it. But generally speaking, everything is confidential and has a certain risk. So what is the purpose of protecting information? We protect to control intentional or unintentional access and even unintentional leakage. So before we can protect files, we need to know beforehand what. So before we can protect, we need to know what is handled in the organization, the type of data, where is it stored, with whom is it shared, etc. Okay, so it is essential to know the real flow of the information. We need to analyze the whole information lifecycle from its creation until its destruction. Also, before getting into protection, we need to know what exact risk we are facing in case of a harmful event. Okay, we have to develop a methodology. In fact, we as SealPath, we do have a methodology to identify the information at risk, and this methodology I would like to present to you today. It consists of two phases. Okay, today we will be mostly concentrating on phase one, but I would like to explain both phases to you. So in phase one, we identify what we actually have. Okay, so in order to know what to protect, we need to know what data there actually is. We identify types of information at this stage. Not sure if you know the saying, what is not documented in a company does not exist. Okay, so other way around, all that is documented exists and reflects some kind of value or is certain value for an organization. So we need to protect that. Obviously, we need to differentiate between personal and sensitive data. Okay, we can. There is a difference in legislation for each type of data, and with the help of our questionnaire, we are achieving to identify types of information. Then in phase two, once we are capable or once we have identified our data, in order to know how to protect, we need to design a documentation lifecycle flow, okay, according to the data lifecycle, and identify points of risk. All that at the first stage or this first part of the phase two, we do without any protection, without taking into consideration any protection mechanism. We just identify how the life cycle of the data is looking like. So we get the life cycle flow of the data of the organization. Then in the second part of the phase two, we create protection policy, protection rules. We define what could be implemented to protect your data. And then finally, in the last stage of phase two, we design the documentation lifecycle, but this time with its protection applied, with the rules and policies that we have designed in the second part of phase two. So this gives us a full picture or a before and after view of how your processes look like at the beginning, after applying the protection, how they would look like once applied. So you get you could compare how this implementation would impact and what effect it could have on your organization. Okay. This is the idea of the methodology we are proposing. So here are some tips for this particular phase one and the data identification phase. You need to involve all staff in a certain department, because we will be analyzing the organization by departments. And here, not just the operational staff would be involved, but also management. We would have to involve at least someone from different areas, because we need to have the point of view of all of them. Okay, it's not enough to have only the point of view of the operational staff. We need also management to be involved to give us the full picture of what is happening in the department. Okay. So when doing the inventory, you need to know how you classify data. You need to talk about the context. What do I have and what regulations apply to me? Okay. We could take advantage of technology that is already available in a company to do this identification. So there are many tools nowadays that may be already implemented. There could be some classification tools that give you visibility where your data is located, how it is classified. DLP solution, even a CM solution could be helpful here to give you a better picture of your organization. Then we would need to reflect on, or another tip is to reflect on where the info is located, with whom is it shared, what kind of information it is. This helps to create this life cycle flow I was talking about earlier. And very important point is to have a strategy of continuous improvement. Okay, risks can go up or down, and you need to keep your register updated. Okay, with regarding risks, information, the flows. It continuously evolves, and you need to adapt to those, or you need to reflect those evolutions in your repository. The steps we have defined in the questionnaire can be seen here. So to have a full picture, we need a global vision and the context around the data. Okay, context is key here. There are simple methodologies that can help. Our methodology helps to analyze and understand the context of the data. So in phase one, or the phase one can be divided into first, know what area is handling the data. Is it HR, finance, compliance? But as you know, sales department is not the same as HR. Okay, so you also get to know, by knowing the department, who interacts with this area. Are there external users involved who receive certain information or certain files? These are more or less general questions, but they need to be responded. Data types and life cycle would be the next step, where we identify where the data is hosted, where it travels to, what protection measures are in place, if any. Okay, if the data is shared on a regular basis, is it destroyed at the end of its life cycle? This is not very usual, but there may be some contractual clauses maybe that force you, or that gives external or internals the obligation to destroy information. Then we analyze the general risk. Risk, as you might or might not know, is probability times impact. So how probable is an event to happen, and how big of an impact would it have? Okay. There could be, so risk for an event that is not very probable to happen, but the impact would be huge, could be the same as, for example, an very probable event to happen, but with a very low impact. Could be more or less the same risk. Okay, so we multiply those two factors, and the impact types we consider are operational, legal, economic, reputational, and all those impacts we measure at the data level. Okay. Then we get to the risk by typology. This is specific risk analysis, risk per document, so to say. So risk per security dimension is measured here. The security dimensions are confidentiality, integrity, availability, traceability, and authenticity. Okay. And as a result of those risk analysis, we get global and specific risk analysis. I will show you some diagrams how this could look like with our methodology. But as for now, just this slide here. Now, with the help of our questionnaire, we will look at the context of each area. So for each stage, here in stage one, we will analyze or take note of what the mission of the department is. Okay, what does the department actually do? Are there some services that are outsourced? Therefore, is there some interaction with external staff from the data perspective? What is the actual number of internal and external staff? Do they manage public information? Is certain information limited to certain users, clients, or only internal staff? And what's the type of information they manage? Okay, so HR department obviously is not the same as production or financial. They manage all different type of information, okay? After getting to know the department, we compile the information about what information has been handled. Is it sensitive or not? Who has access to it? Where is it stored? It could be on, let's say, on a file server, SharePoint, or just on personal folders on the endpoints. With whom is it shared? Who is, how is it shared? By what means? Is it through corporate media sharing tools, which obviously would be more secure than a messaging service like WhatsApp, for example? And who can modify, edit, and print it? Or what kind of permissions are given or should be given to certain files, to certain information? So based on our previous analysis, we will make the composition of the flow. We will analyze what's the type of the documentation, which file formats are being used. Some file types could be more difficult to protect than others, obviously, okay? We might not have this very granular control over certain file types. Some might only be encrypted in a very simple way, or more granular for other file types. What's the actual scope? Where are they located and who has permission? For example, are the files stored on a file server where it's hard to tell who actually has what kind of access? Okay, you may know those scenarios where there's a file server with tons of folders and not even the administrators get to know the scope and get to know who is accessing what kind of information, what permission was given to whom. So after analyzing the area and the data flow, we are moving forward to analyze the global risks. Okay, so the formula here again is probability by impact according or in relation to the data. So how probable is something to happen and how big of an impact it will have. A weighting is made according to certain parameters. Here we have, in our case, we have legal, financial or economic, reputational, operational risk. So this helps to get the correct perception of the risk, okay? Here we talk about a typical risk analysis, but focused on data and information. Here in Spain, in the field of electronic administration, there is the National Security Scheme, short ENS. I assume the kind of regulation also exists in your countries. It's a regulation that aims to establish the security policy for the use of electronic media related to public administration. Okay, it allows to make an analysis of the information that exists for each service of your system or the service in which you want to be certified. So this is a good way to analyzing the data and helps with the risk analysis. Let me show you now a diagram where the results of the global risk or how the results of a global risk analysis would look like. So you have here type of data. Okay, this is below here. Strategic data, it could be financial data, data about suppliers, etc. Then there is the color scale here. What is low, medium, high risk for me as an organization? And you have the risk matrix. Again, this is probability by impact. So here you see a real case of an HR department that is providing canteen service to their employees and also the children of those employees. So they store information on allergies. Okay, this is especially sensitive information as it is health data, and therefore it has a higher risk. So there is decision-related data which shows here, I think this is, decision-related data. This shows less risks or less risk. It will have to be protected as well, but with less exhaustive measures, okay, as the risk is much less. Now, after the global risk analysis, we jump to the specific risk analysis. So you can focus on specific documents, to specific files, file types that you would be protecting or you would have to take into consideration. Obviously, not all documents are going to have the same level of confidentiality. For the specific risk analysis, we have to follow security dimensions. Okay, so what impact would a leak have for each dimension? We will try to find this out, and the 5 security dimensions are confidentiality, integrity, availability, traceability, and authenticity. So these dimensions give you a perception of the impact or the risk for these specific documents within these dimensions. So for a particular organization, availability might be more important than confidentiality, for example. Okay, it could be individually adjusted to each organization. It's possible to play around with what's more risky for one and less risky for more and less risky for an organization. Okay, so the result of this specific risk analysis could look something like this. Okay, so again, we focus here on documents. So in this graph, you see the result, and the result could, or the analysis could happen based on evaluating on a scale from 0 to 3 in this case, or from 0 to 5. For every safety dimension or security dimension, an average could be created, and you get the document types at most risk. So as for document types, we have, for the same HR case I just showed, here we have invoices, payroll, sanctions, reports, etc. So these document types are most at risk here. So now in this case, we have evaluations, medical informs, medical reports, and this is salutary data, and pay slips, also very sensitive. So in this graph, there are documents that need to be protected more than others. Obviously, like you see here, minutes of meetings, they have less risk. So you can also split these results by dimension. We have here one graph for all the dimensions, but you can have one graph only for confidentiality, one graph only for integrity, etc. Okay. As you see here, availability as one of those dimensions I mentioned earlier is in brackets, and it is actually not taken into account, because if it is protected more, it doesn't mean that it is more available. Okay, availability depends on the redundancy of the equipment and the system. So let's review what we have seen until now. We have analyzed the areas and the data we have. Okay, so the areas and what data they manage, where it is located, etc. We have analyzed the information flow from its start to its destruction. We have analyzed which data have more risk, and we know what needs to be prioritized. We have the global risk analyst, and then we have focused on specific documents with the specific risk analyst here. Okay, so based on that, we can move forward to measures, security measures. So after analyzing the risk, we should define what measures could be taken. So these measures will or should, as an end result, minimize the discovered risks. We are looking for measures that adapt to the typology of the data at risk. So among them, there could be, or should be maybe, you should use technologies there that are already available to you. Some of them mentioned earlier. Choose technologies that not only minimizes the risks, but also adapts to the processes. This is very important. We want as little as possible. We want as little friction as possible by implementing such security measures. Okay, we don't want to have users. We don't want to frustrate employees, users, and we don't want them to avoid the security measures or try to not move them, to not use them just to have a easier life. So there should be as little. They should do as little impact as possible. We want to establish procedures and involve all the personnel involved during the data lifecycle. So those people through whom the information passes from its creation to its destruction. We want, or we should do an adjustment to the infrastructure to adapt it to the security needs. So perimeter protection, the equipment, applications, etc. And then we should define roles for monitoring and control of compliance. So who will be responsible for what? Now here's an example of the security measures we have defined and taken. In this case, we have high risk documents handled by the HR department, which we have discovered. So it is a question of finding measures which should be simple, okay, allowing to automate the processes to the highest possible degree and allowing control and audit. So in this particular case, we have discovered that there are 3 types of files being handled by the HR department. We have confidential files, we have internal use files, and we have files shared with external parties. So in the first case, confidential files, we have defined a protection policy with access only to HR management and general management, both of them with full control permission. Once defined the policy, we have proposed and implemented a folder protection rule, automatic folder protection rule where the files are located. So this would enforce the policy, okay? The way it works is that as the first step, it will protect every file within such folder, and from that moment on, it will activate a watcher to protect and make sure everything new, every file that is created, moved, or copied by the users, by the employees into that folder, that it will be protected automatically. So effectively, users would start to work, to use their usual process or work within their usual processes. They would create files within those folders, and those files would be protected automatically, so no end user intervention would be needed. It will be a natural process for them, and files will be protected. So once this is implemented or was implemented, sharing by email or giving access to such a protected folder could be done easily. Files will still be protected as they would be encrypted. Okay, so the encryption, the protection would travel with the files. And that's the first case we have implemented. In the second case, the internal use files, here we have defined a different protection policy with access to internal HR team with restricted permissions, view, edit, print, copy, and paste, and also a watermark option. So there will be a visual representation of the user who has opened the file, and then file name, IP address, and timestamp from where the user is connecting. It could not prevent someone from taking a picture with a mobile phone, but at least if someone would do so, this would help us to identify who was responsible for the leak. So again, we have created another folder protection rule where this policy would be applied, and files would be protected in an automatic way. And sharing in this case was done through email, internal chat, and also giving access to the folder. So all those use cases for file sharing are easily to be done. Finally, files that are shared with external parties, here the policy was also different. The definition was to give restricted access to external users, so only view permission was given, and also watermark was applied. And human resources department had full control permission over the files. Again, folder protection rule applied, and the sharing was possible through access to a folder in cloud. Okay, so this folder protection rule could also be applied to folders on SharePoint, on Google Drive, on your cloud folders. Now, a few words about best practices for protecting information. First, we recommend a periodic training and awareness raising. So you might be aware that people lose focus with time, with routine. So a periodic training makes a lot of sense, not only to IT staff, CISOs, but also to data managers and end users, or mainly to end users. This is maybe the most important part, as they have their focus on different subjects in the day-to-day. Data encryption, from our point of view, this is the most effective method as it acts also outside the organization. As mentioned before, an encrypted file, a protected file would allow file sharing. The protection would travel with the file. So that is recommended from our side. Also, it can protect against ransomware attacks. So if you have your files encrypted, and a ransomware attack, which would doubly encrypt your files, would prevent, would make it impossible for the attacker to go public with your data, because they could not access them. Okay, so as long as you have a backup copy which is not affected by ransomware, you are basically on the safe side. Data breach response plan, ensuring compliance with data privacy laws and regulations such as GDPR, would make a lot of sense. So here we have, we should define a notification process for internal and external communication, a breach investigation, how a breach investigation would look like in case of an event. So we would investigate how something or how this event happened, what data was affected, and who have been affected. Then we would have to define measures to contain the breach and minimize the impact, and post-breach assessment to avoid this to happen again. In some cases, it would also make sense to have a public relation management plan to restore the image of an organization in case of some kind of breach, public breach that could happen to an organization. Another best practice is to use reliable security software, use recognized security vendors, use solutions validated by independent authorities. Here in Spain, we have the National Cryptologic Center, CCN short. This validates such solutions, and use security software that is easy to use. That's very important. Okay, we don't want users to go to an unnecessary learning curve. We wanted them to use it easy, in an easy way, and don't give them much headaches. And finally, implement rigorous access controls. Apply strict measures to ensure that only authorized persons can access, view, modify, or share confidential or sensitive information. And this can be achieved by implementing security policies and technologies that protect access rights to data throughout its complete life cycle. Okay. So at the end, I would like to go over some frequently asked questions. some questions to consider here would be, what is normal, personal, or sensitive data, and according to what criteria is it determined? So it's not only important to know the context of the data, but it's also important to differentiate between normal data and personal sensitive data, okay? Personal data is not normal data. Personal data, as for the definition, allows to identify a person. It's information. So this data is information which by means of an identifier makes it possible to identify a person. In this case, also data protection regulations such as GDPR comes into play, okay? Then in case of sensitive data, this is even stricter regulated data, as it reveals information about health, religion, sexual orientation, etc., of a natural person. So generally, they are defined by law. There are very broad definitions here, and they need to be reviewed in every case specifically. Okay. Second question: what happens if I don't control who the information is shared with and where it is hosted? So there would be the risk of data leakage, misuse, confidentiality, disclosure of secrets. If you don't control with whom the information is shared and where the information is hosted, you cannot identify what is going on. Okay, this should be the message here. In case of a leak, you may not know about it, so you will not be able to notify the authorities. You have usually a 72 hours limit to notify the authorities. So you may be sanctioned and fined, even in a heavier. The fine will be bigger if you don't even know about this kind of leak. Okay, so you need to know to be able to react. What scope should I have when analyzing the information and its typology? What level of detail is needed to do this identification? So you should identify data flow and see what type of data there is, okay? To do this, you will have to analyze everything, as we mentioned before, all areas and all stuff. So this would give you the global vision of what is there. And once done, we can start protecting what is most critical, but the idea should be to protect everything, okay? So what if my information is processed by vendors or third parties? Usually the focus is on GDPR in such cases, and the contractual part, there might be some contractual part is often forgotten. So the provider is often, in some cases, asked to delete the data if it's no longer used, but yeah, this doesn't happen much. We tend to forget about informing them, or they tend to forget to delete it even after we have insisted to do so. So the solution here is pretty simple. We could apply a protection with an expiration date, okay? So you just say this data will be accessible until a certain date, and once this date arrives, files will be still there, but encrypted and therefore useless for anyone to access. And yeah, that will be the correct response in that case. And finally, where should I start? What are the areas of greatest data protection risks in my organization? Well, it should be done to everything, but perhaps it's true. It is best to start with areas that handle particular sensitive information. So where a fine may be imposed. We talk here about HR department, compliance, areas with health data, strategic areas, etc. So where the impact of a leak may be greater. Okay, remember, impact could be economic, operational, legal, and reputational. So that will be mostly it from my side. Do you have any question? Please raise them. I see there might be already some. What file formats you support from CAD, DXF, DWG, etc.? There is a comment already. Yes, all those we do support, but there are two factors to take into consideration here. What application and what format, because some formats for certain applications are supported and for other applications the same formats might not. So we need to have the clear picture of what application we're talking about and what format. Generally speaking, we are capable of protect any file format, but if you want to have granular control, digital rights control, we would have to check each file and each application and file individually, okay? Do you support to protect inbound email and end user device? Yes and no. So yeah. The idea of having your files protected at its source on a file server, SharePoint, wherever they are created, would make them protected on every device, okay, that they will be protected everywhere where they are. It is possible to protect also on endpoints, on mobile devices, tablets, etc. And for inbound, we have integration with, for example, Exchange server, where you could define rules which would trigger our solution and make sure that it will be protected once email comes in, for example, okay? But here, automatic folder protection is key, I would say. My colleague answered, we have an add-in for Outlook, allowing the users to encrypt both message body and attachments. So when they are creating their messages, they could use them. They could use such kind of plugins.